Do you ever wonder why some people seem to carry anxiety like a constant companion, while others navigate life with an ease that feels almost foreign to you? Have you ever asked yourself why your nervous system feels like it's always on high alert, even when there's no immediate danger in sight? What if I told you that the seeds of chronic anxiety were often planted long before you could even understand what was happening to you? Thank you for clicking on this video, and welcome to Not What It Seems, where you'll receive daily content that challenges the way we think about mental health, trauma, and human behavior. I'm grateful you're here, and I want you to know that what we're about to explore together might just change the way you understand your own anxiety forever. The work of renowned physician and trauma expert Gabor Maté has shown us something profound about anxiety that most of us have never considered. When we think about anxiety, we often focus on the present moment, on the racing thoughts, the tight chest, the sweaty palms, and the overwhelming sense that something terrible is about to happen. But what if anxiety isn't really about the present at all? What if it's actually a messenger from our past, carrying information about experiences we had when we were too young to process them consciously? Think about this for a moment. When you were a child, your survival depended entirely on your caregivers. Your little nervous system was constantly scanning the environment, asking one fundamental question: am I safe? But here's what's fascinating about childhood development. A child doesn't need to experience overt trauma to develop anxiety. Sometimes the most profound impacts come from what psychologists call developmental trauma, or attachment wounds, that happen not through dramatic events, but through the absence of something crucial. Imagine a child who grows up in a home where emotions are never discussed, where crying is met with impatience, or where love feels conditional on being good or perfect. This child learns to suppress their natural emotional responses because expressing them doesn't feel safe. Their nervous system adapts by becoming hypervigilant, always scanning for signs of disapproval or rejection. This adaptation, while protective in childhood, can become the foundation for chronic anxiety in adulthood. But let's dig deeper into what actually happens in a child's developing brain when they don't receive the emotional attunement they need. Dr. Maté's work shows us that children are born with an innate need for both attachment and authenticity. They need to feel deeply connected to their caregivers, but they also need to feel accepted for who they truly are. When these two needs come into conflict, when a child feels they must choose between being authentic and being loved, anxiety often becomes the compromise. Consider the child who learns that their sadness makes mommy upset, or that their anger makes daddy withdraw. This child faces an impossible choice: be real and risk losing love, or be false and maintain connection. The nervous system, prioritizing survival above all else, will choose connection every time. But this choice comes with a cost. The child begins to disconnect from their own internal signals, their own needs, their own truth. And when we lose touch with our inner compass, anxiety often rushes in to fill the void. Here's where it gets really interesting. The anxiety that develops in these situations isn't just emotional, it's deeply physical. When a child's nervous system is chronically activated by emotional uncertainty or instability, it creates lasting changes in brain structure and function. The amygdala, our brain's alarm system, becomes hyperactive. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking and emotional regulation, may become less developed. These changes can persist well into adulthood, creating a biological foundation for chronic anxiety. Now you might be wondering, but my childhood wasn't that bad. My parents loved me. Why do I still struggle with anxiety? This is one of the most important insights from trauma-informed psychology. You don't need to have experienced dramatic abuse or neglect to carry the imprints of childhood stress. Sometimes the most impactful experiences are the ones that seem almost invisible, the emotional needs that went unmet, the moments when a child's feelings were dismissed or minimized. Think about the parent who was physically present but emotionally unavailable, perhaps struggling with their own unresolved trauma or simply overwhelmed by life's demands. Think about the well-meaning parent who responded to every expression of fear or sadness with, "Don't worry about it," or "You're being too sensitive." These responses, while not malicious, can teach a child that their internal experience isn't valid or trustworthy.
What happens when we grow up believing that our emotions are too much, too dramatic, or simply wrong? We develop what psychologists call emotional dysregulation. We lose the ability to trust our own feelings as sources of information about our needs and boundaries. Instead of feeling sad when something genuinely sad happens, we might feel anxious. Instead of feeling angry when our boundaries are crossed, we might feel panic. Anxiety becomes a catch-all emotion that shows up whenever we can't access or trust our authentic feelings. But there's another layer to this that's equally important. Children who grow up in environments where they can't express their authentic selves often develop what Dr. Maté calls scattered attention. They become hyper-vigilant to external cues about how they should be, what they should want, and how they should respond. This constant external focus means they never develop a strong sense of internal awareness. They might struggle to know what they actually want, need, or feel because they've spent so much energy trying to figure out what others want from them. Imagine trying to navigate life without a reliable internal compass. Every decision becomes fraught with anxiety because you're not sure what you actually want or need. Every relationship becomes a source of stress because you're constantly trying to read the other person's needs while ignoring your own. Every choice feels overwhelming because you've never learned to trust your own judgment. This is the lived experience of many people who developed anxiety in childhood, even if they can't remember specific traumatic events. Now let's talk about something that might surprise you. The body keeps score of these early experiences in ways that the mind might not even remember. Have you ever noticed that your anxiety often shows up as physical symptoms? The tight chest, the shallow breathing, the knot in your stomach, the tension in your shoulders. These aren't just side effects of anxious thoughts. They're often the primary way your nervous system is trying to communicate with you about unresolved experiences from your past. When we understand anxiety through this lens, it becomes less of an enemy to fight and more of a messenger to listen to. Your anxiety might be your nervous system's way of saying, "Hey, something here reminds me of a time when I didn't feel safe to be myself." Or it might be saying, "I learned early that I needed to be constantly alert to other people's moods and needs, and I haven't learned how to turn that vigilance off."
This is where the real healing begins. Instead of trying to eliminate anxiety through willpower or positive thinking, we can start to approach it with curiosity and compassion. We can ask ourselves, what is my anxiety trying to tell me? What old wounds might it be protecting? What parts of myself did I learn to hide or suppress in order to feel loved and accepted? If you're going through this situation and feel like you want to add to our content, please write your experiences in the comments. I would love to read your comment and learn from your journey as well. Your story matters, and sharing it might help someone else feel less alone in their struggle with anxiety. Understanding the childhood roots of anxiety doesn't mean we're doomed to repeat old patterns forever. In fact, this understanding can be incredibly liberating. When we realize that our anxiety isn't a character flaw or a sign of weakness, but rather an adaptive response to early experiences, we can begin to approach it with the same compassion we'd show a frightened child. Because in many ways, that's exactly what our anxiety is, a part of us that learned to be afraid very early and has been trying to protect us ever since. The beautiful thing about the human nervous system is its capacity for healing and rewiring throughout our lives. This process, called neuroplasticity, means that the same brain that learned to be anxious in childhood can learn new patterns of safety and regulation in adulthood. But this healing requires more than just understanding. It requires consistent, gentle practice in learning to feel safe in our own bodies and to trust our own internal experience. One of the most powerful things we can do is to start paying attention to our body's signals with curiosity rather than judgment. When you notice your chest tightening or your breathing becoming shallow, instead of trying to push the feeling away, you might try saying to yourself, "I notice that I'm feeling activated right now. What might my nervous system be trying to tell me?" This simple shift from resistance to curiosity can begin to create new neural pathways.
Learning to regulate our nervous system is like learning to be a good parent to ourselves. Just as a loving parent would comfort a frightened child, we can learn to offer ourselves the same kind of soothing presence. This might look like taking slow, deep breaths, placing a hand on your heart, or simply acknowledging your feelings without trying to change them immediately. These practices help teach your nervous system that you're safe in the present moment, even if you didn't always feel safe in the past. Another crucial aspect of healing childhood-rooted anxiety is learning to reconnect with your authentic self. This means practicing paying attention to what you actually want, need, and feel, separate from what you think you should want or what others expect from you. It means giving yourself permission to have preferences, boundaries, and emotions, even if they weren't welcome in your childhood environment. This process of reconnection often involves grieving for the child who had to hide parts of themselves to feel loved, grieving for the years spent feeling anxious and disconnected from your own truth, grieving for the relationships that might have been deeper if you'd felt safe to be authentic. This grief is not weakness. It's a necessary part of healing. It's your psyche's way of making space for new growth. Sometimes people ask whether it's possible to heal from childhood trauma without remembering specific events. The answer is absolutely yes. Your body and nervous system hold the imprints of your experiences, and they can heal even when your conscious mind doesn't have clear memories. The healing happens through present moment experiences of safety, attunement, and acceptance. Whether that comes through therapy, supportive relationships, spiritual practice, or other forms of healing work. It's also important to understand that healing isn't linear. There will be days when your anxiety feels overwhelming, when old patterns feel stronger than new ones, when you feel like you're not making progress. This is normal and expected. Healing happens in spirals, not straight lines. Each time you cycle back to familiar feelings or patterns, you have the opportunity to meet them from a slightly different place, with slightly more awareness and compassion. The relationship between childhood experiences and adult anxiety is complex and deeply personal. What felt threatening to one child might have felt manageable to another. What one nervous system registered as danger might have processed as simply challenging. There's no hierarchy of trauma, no competition for who had it worst. Your experience is valid, regardless of how it compares to others' stories.
One of the most healing realizations for many people is understanding that their parents or caregivers likely did the best they could with the resources and awareness they had at the time. This doesn't minimize the impact of their actions or inactions, but it can help free us from the burden of blame and resentment that often keeps us stuck in old patterns. Our parents were once children too,
carrying their own unhealed wounds and unconscious patterns. As we begin to heal our own relationship with anxiety, we often find that we're not just healing ourselves, but breaking generational patterns. The work we do to understand and integrate our own childhood experiences can prevent us from unconsciously passing those same patterns on to the next generation, whether that's our own children or the other young people in our lives. Understanding anxiety through the lens of childhood development also helps us have more compassion for others who struggle with similar issues. When we see someone who seems overly worried, controlling, or reactive, instead of judging them, we might wonder what their nervous system learned early about what it takes to feel safe. This shift in perspective can transform not just our relationship with ourselves, but our relationships with others as well. The journey of healing childhood-rooted anxiety is ultimately a journey of coming home to yourself. It's about learning to trust your own internal wisdom, to feel safe in your own skin, and to show up authentically in your relationships. It's about discovering that the very sensitivity that might have felt like a burden in childhood can become a superpower in adulthood when it's properly supported and understood. As we wrap up our exploration of this profound topic, I want you to remember that awareness is the first step toward healing. Simply understanding the connection between your childhood experiences and your current anxiety is already beginning to change your relationship with both. You're not broken and you're not alone. Your anxiety makes perfect sense when viewed through the lens of your early experiences, and that understanding is the foundation for lasting change. If this content resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd give this video a like. And if you feel moved to share your own experiences or insights in the comments, please do. Your voice matters, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Consider subscribing to Not What It Seems if you'd like to continue this journey of understanding together. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, and remember that healing is always possible.